I want to start this video by wishing everyone watching a happy International Women's Day. I know women have been an integral part of my life and have played, a huge part in who I am today. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the negative economic impact of COVID and how it's disproportionately impacted women when compared to men. And we are also going to talk about how women-led companies don't get the same amount of attention or investment as their male-led counterparts. And then we'll end the video by discussing ways that we can improve the economic conditions of women today and well into the future. Recessions happen. Now, regardless of GDP growth, regardless of unemployment numbers, regardless of, solid stock market performance, recessions happen. Now, recessions can be attributed to a number of factors, but our most recent recession can be attributed to the COVID-19 global health crisis. Now, typically, recessions hit men harder than women because recessions typically tend to disproportionately affect male-dominated industries like construction and manufacturing. We only have to go back to the recession of 2008 and 2009, where men accounted for about 75% of American job losses. And the same can be said of recessions over the course of American history. But something really interesting happened during the COVID-19 recession. During our most recent recession, which we're still climbing out of, women were disproportionately impacted for the first time in history. Now, unlike the 2008 recession where construction and manufacturing were adversely impacted, the COVID-19 pandemic adversely impacted female-dominated industries like retail, like hospitality, and childcare. Now, according to research published by McKinsey, job losses among women proved to be 1.8 times greater than men. And globally, women make up around 39% of the workforce, but have accounted for 54% of total job losses during this global health crisis. Even U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen came out this morning and said, quote, "COVID has had an extremely unfair impact on the income and economic activities of women," close quote, and called for long-term steps to improve women's labor market conditions. Another major factor as to why women have been adversely impacted, which kind of goes under the radar for some reason, is the fact that the pandemic shut down schools and daycare centers around the country. Now, these closures kept kids at home and made it even harder for parents to keep working, especially mothers who tend to provide the majority of childcare. Research shows that with kids being at home during the pandemic, it was typically the woman of the house who either cut hours or completely left the workforce. Now, while the outlook for the U.S. economy looks great, the outlook for pre-pandemic levels of employment for women is still distant. Projections from McKinsey and Oxford estimate that employment for women may not recover to pre-pandemic levels until 2024, which is a full 2 years after the projected recovery for men. Now, the lopsidedness isn't isolated to employment. It also applies to venture capital. Now, for those of you not familiar with what venture capital is a form of private financing that investors provide to startup companies and small businesses that are believed to have long-term growth potential. Now, Fortune magazine recently published an article stating that in 5 days between January 28th and February 1st of 2021, Robinhood raised $3.4 billion in venture capital. Now, these $3.4 billion raised by one company over the course of 5 days is more money than all women-founded companies received in 2019 and 2020. Now, there is no doubt that there are unique circumstances in this particular scenario. I mean, Robinhood has had a tremendous impact, for better or for worse, on society and investing. I'm not saying Robinhood isn't worthy of that valuation. I'm just questioning whether or not women-led companies are getting a fair share of the action. Now, women are creating innovative companies at unprecedented rates. They have the education and they have the skills to build prosperous companies just like their male counterparts. But then I did some research and found out that 90% of venture capital decision makers are men. And those men invest 86% of that capital in all male teams. A more shocking statistic is that only 20 women have ever founded a company and led it through to an IPO. To put that in context, 407 companies went IPO in 2020 alone. So it's safe to say that tens of thousands of companies have gone public over the course of US history, and only 20 of them have been woman-led. The latest being Whitney Wolfe Herd, the founder and CEO of Bumble, a social dating app that was launched in 2014. Now, I've only touched on two components impacting women in the workforce today. The systemic issues are no doubt deeper rooted. But the question is, what can we do to make sure that women aren't adversely impacted by recessions like the one we just had, and recessions that we'll inevitably encounter in the future? Experts and I agree that both employers and governments could expand childcare assistance to empower women to re-enter the workforce more quickly and smoothly after this recession and recessions of the future. I think there could be greater educational support provided to women without high school or college degrees. As much as this world is changing, I'm still a firm believer that education is a great equalizer. And with the acceleration of technology and things like automation, the skills required to do jobs are changing. So we need to do a better job of preparing women for that transition. And employers can also take measures to ensure that women who have left the workforce during the pandemic are offered opportunities to make up for lost time. Now, based on my research, these are just some of the high-level changes that could level the playing field for women. But what do you guys think? If you have some better ideas or input, please let me know in the comments section below. Since the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, women not only gained the right to vote, they also became an integral part of the American economy. Now, there is no doubt that the American economy wouldn't be as prosperous as it is today had it not been for women joining the workforce. Now, just this morning, I learned that we currently have 41 companies in the S&P 500 that are being led by a woman CEO, and that's compared to just one company that was being led by a woman in 1983. In recent months, we've seen history with Kamala Harris, a woman, becoming vice president. Now, even with all of this progress, I still think that we can do more as a society. So God bless all of the women across the world. We love you. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you learned something new today. I'll see you next time.